hour. Hopefully we have probably a fair number of people that are working from home or working in the office, so hopefully you're having some lunch while we're talking here. But really wanted to say thank you for taking the time to talk about time today. So over the next hour, we're going to go through the agenda here and kind of talk about what we're going to go through in the next hour. So first thing we're going to do, being somebody who always gives presentations and a university person, can't do that without having learning outcomes. And so in how to position yourself in this webinar. Everybody that has joined this, I'm sure, has a variety of different reasons and what they're hoping to get out of it. So we're going to talk about that at the beginning. We're going to talk about why are we talking about time management and why is it hard to talk about time management, and then we're going to talk about why this presentation really isn't actually about time management. And then of course, you know, the worst thing in the world is anytime we ever go to a webinar and we say, oh gosh, well there was 60 minutes of my life I never got back and I don't know what to do with it. My hope is that at the very end we're going to talk about ways to make it all better and give you some different tools and tricks and things to have up your sleeve to institute for yourself. I do invite you to, if you have any questions or concerns or anything, Bailey is going to be monitoring our chat there. There will be a point at the beginning here where I actually ask for some participation. So if you want to unmic yourself, if you want to put your video on, or if you want to put questions or comments in the chat, I certainly invite you to do that. That makes our experience a little bit more rich that way. So there's 3 learning outcomes for this presentation. The first one is kind of learning about the actual realities, myths, and woes of time management. All of us are working adults and we have experienced a variety of different situations and different life encounters that we learn where we're good at managing our time and where we struggle, but we're going to kind of go through some of those realities and myths. We're also going to talk about that time management isn't actually about time at all. In fact, it's about prioritization, early preview. And then we're going to actually learn some tangible takeaways and ways to manage your time through technology, structure, and prioritization. So positioning yourself in this webinar, I always give presentations and I ask individuals to think about the 4 W's. The first one is, what is it? So what are we actually talking about? The second is, why is this important? Third, why is this important to me? And fourth, what do I do with this? And so I ask you, you know, if you're somebody who takes notes, maybe write those 4 W's down at the top of your piece of paper there, or just kind of think about that throughout the next 60 minutes, because that's where the personal takeaways and the personal learning comes for each one of us as individuals. So first things first, why are we talking about time management? You tell me. So right now I'd invite you to, if you want to go ahead and in the chat, or you can turn on your mic, share why we or you want to talk more about time management and what are your biggest concerns. And I will give some time and space for that. So anybody wants to put any comments or ask anything, share anything, just why are we wanting to talk more about time management? Maybe we're feeling a little shy. Okay, thank you, Naomi, for being the first one. Okay, feeling like there's not enough time. We have a whole day in front of us, but we run out of time. Doing a lot of things, yet not getting anything done. Yeah, thank you, Anna. Working from home and not getting easily distracted, that's certainly a big one I think a lot of us are facing right now. The distractions, operating with less people, a lot of budgetary changes and things. Never enough time in the day. Yeah, great, great. This is awesome. And this is what I kind of figured was going to come from this group is, you know, I think anybody who's in any type of work situation, you know, the more efficient you become, the more you're able to take on more projects and more priorities. And there's always that saying of, you know, good workers are rewarded with more work, right? And people who show off their prowess are recognized and given more opportunities to do more work. Well, part of that at some point comes into some intersection of there's not enough time in the day, or I get really frazzled. I don't know how to prioritize this stuff. I don't know how to figure out which task is biggest or most important, or which one I should tackle first. So yeah, so hopefully we're going to hit some of that stuff, but I will tell you too, although I'm the person giving the presentation, I am far from the expert. I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you 100% of the time I have it all figured out, and you know, my priorities are perfect every time, and I finish the projects on time. In fact, I know I have a couple of my team members from UWS that are on this webinar today too, and they would be the first people to attest of like, yeah, you know, Mickey gets out of line every once in a while, and then time prioritization sometimes gets really challenging. But what I can tell you is, you know, I have the unique qualifications of being somebody who's, you know, working I'm in an interim position that was just created in a new division at the university that was just created about 6 months ago. I'm also retaining some elements of a former position that I was in for up until last November. For the last 4.5 years, I was working on my PhD and my dissertation process and completed that in November. So kind of uniquely qualified to be the person who was both working full-time as well as schooling full-time, getting married, all sorts of stuff in there. And so I think there's certainly some things that I've learned across time here to become a better prioritizer. So we're talking about this because, and you all named this exactly, but it's important for us to talk about time management, not just from the space of how do we squeeze out more time in every single day to get the work done, but recognizing that there are some myths out there that I think we know in our brains, but we don't necessarily believe. There's more and more research that's coming out there that actually shows that our brains truly can't focus on more than one thing at a time, even though we tell ourselves over and over again that it can. You know, I can do these two things, I can be thinking about this other thing, I can be listening to a podcast or whatever it is in the background because I'm a multitasker and I can do all of these things. To a certain extent, we can balance multiple tasks and multiple priorities at once, but our brains truly are much more singular focused in the recent research that's out there than we think they are. And so, you know, there's other research, and I was just reading an article the other day that said for every distraction that is a significant distraction that pulls us away for 2 to 3 minutes, it takes 24 to 27 minutes to truly come back to what we were focusing on before then. So when you start thinking about an entire work day, or you start thinking about an entire work week, think of all of that lost time or that confused time or that murky time that we're trying to get ourselves and get our brains back into that place of original focus on task. And if you're anything like me, sometimes I tend to bop all over the place because I have a ton of ideas. And so managing that energy around ideas and that energy around problem solving with the tasks that I'm actually working on, and you throw in a distraction in there or something that pulls us away, whether it's a notification from our inbox or a chat or a dog that's barking or a partner that's in the house or whatever it is, 24 to 27 minutes sometimes for us to go back into that original place of focus. That's huge, right? And so thinking about how do we get ourselves to a place where we can be in singular focus, but we also feel like we're getting things done. And that's something that I'm seeing in the chat there was, you know, just trying to keep up and trying to make sure that I feel like I'm getting something done is a big one. I mentioned the chat and notifications. We certainly have many more stimuli hitting our brains, hitting our screens, hitting our fingertips than we ever have before. I know I was just talking to Bailey before we started here. I'm sitting here with multiple screens. I have my cell phone. I have 2 dogs laying at my feet. There's probably going to be a cat meowing in the background at some point. My partner's upstairs working. You know, there's many, many stimuli that are coming. And then I just think about just my work environment where I have multiple chats going with people, notifications from different systems that I function in, all of these types of things. How do we manage all of that stimuli, and how do we not let those stimuli really push us to that place of not being able to concentrate? As mentioned in the chat as well, I would assume many of us are still working in alternative environments where either we're working from home entirely or we are working in a situation where sometimes we're in the office and sometimes we're telecommuting, whatever that might look like. There's a lot of unique, and I will call it unique stimuli that come with that, right? Which is the dogs at your feet or the child that's in the room next door or your partner or whatever it might be. Things that we don't necessarily have to quote unquote deal with when we're in the office environment. But now that we're in this environment, we have to manage those priorities and that time in a different sort of way. So why is this hard to talk about? It is hard to talk about this. before, and I would say pre-COVID, but across all industries, more is being asked. People are being voluntold, which is one of my favorite phrases. You're not being volunteered, but you're also being told. You're being voluntold to do certain duties, add things onto their work, whatever it is, with less resources, less time, and perhaps no incentive at all. And so, you know, certainly now in the pandemic situation, lots and lots of, you know, economic upheaval that has caused, you know, furloughs of employees, layoffs of employees, stalled searches to get new employees, budget reductions, job uncertainties, less spending power. All of these types of things make it much more complicated in the work environment and in our personal environments to be able to feel like, okay, am I actually getting all of the things done that I need to get done? Or if I was if I was in a team of 4 people, but 2 people are laid off for a period of time or furloughed for a period of time, am I now having to take on some of their duties on top of all of the rest of my duties? Oh my gosh, how do I prioritize? How do I figure out how to fit this into my day? That's a huge, huge thing that many of us are facing right now, is just the time management element of supporting other people's work, or, you know, having our work supported by others. It's also hard to talk about this because I think most people probably want to say that, hey, by the time I am a full-time working professional, whether I'm in my first job, my 5th job, whatever it might be, I'm at the beginning of my career, the end of my career, we want to tell ourselves, yeah, we're pretty good at this because by this age, I should have it all figured out. Or, you know, I've been working full time for, you know, 20 years or whatever. And so naturally I should be good at managing time. Or I should be, you know, I think I'm probably better than most. So it's hard for us to kind of face the music and our own realities to say, you know what, maybe I'm not as good at this as I thought I was, because now I have evidence in front of me showing me that I'm struggling, or that this is difficult, or that the things that I used and my tools and my resources, you know, 5 years ago or 10 years ago aren't really helping me meet the needs of my current work life. Also, and this is ironic because I'm going to talk about technology and systems in a bit here, but we also think that a lot of our technology and the systems that we have made us bigger, faster, stronger, more efficient, more effective. All of these words that I love, all of these things that I strive for, but sometimes we have to face the reality that some of our technology has actually slowed us down. It's actually made things more complicated. It hasn't made us more efficient, or our training on it is deficient, and so we don't really know how to maximize the usage of those tools. And so sometimes we say, oh, we'll use this technology platform for making to-do lists, or managing your projects, or, you know, managing your employees, when in fact maybe the time that you're putting into that is not actually helping you get even better. So number 3, why is this actually not about time management? You've heard me say it a few times already, but time management is actually more about a process of prioritization than it is about time. Our time management behaviors, and I kind of listed out some here, they're actually kind of naughty behaviors and bad patterns that we get ourselves into. And I listed out a few of them here, and I'm sure some of you will probably chuckle or kind of check, yep, that's me, when we list out some of these kind of naughty time management behaviors. One of the things for anybody that uses Outlook or Gmail is when you schedule meetings, the automatic setting in those is that meetings last for an hour. So sometimes we don't actually go into the settings and change it to, well, meetings automatically last a half an hour for me, or 45 minutes for me. So what we do is we schedule a bunch of 1-hour meetings, and like a gas fills the container in which we put it in, right? And so if a half an hour meeting is set for an hour block, a lot of times a group of individuals will make it last an hour, right? We have all been in those meetings before. Maybe we've even run those meetings where if we actually got to the task at hand right at the beginning, the meeting might be a 20-minute meeting. It might be a 25-minute meeting. But then all of a sudden it turns into a 45-minute meeting because maybe we're doing some chatting, maybe we're not actually on task, maybe we're not actually focusing on the true agenda that's in front of us. Having a meeting. Sometimes you don't even need to have a meeting, right? But we say, oh, well, let me go ahead and schedule a meeting so that we can talk about this. That's really good, right? Because there's dedicated time and space, and people are coming to a place knowing that they want to talk about a certain task or a project or whatever it might be. But oftentimes, and I've thought of this a lot more recently too, is sometimes it's just a matter of picking up the phone or saying, hey, do you have 5 minutes right now? We can hammer this out and we can get this all figured out, as opposed to, let me go ahead and schedule a meeting next week for an hour. And, you know, kind of delaying that conversation from happening and making it much less effective in terms of the use of your time. Not moving. You'll probably notice you see me shifting around a little bit here. I was lucky to get a sit to stand desk for my birthday a couple of weeks ago. And that I have found has changed my work pattern significantly just over the last couple of weeks. Because now that I'm not sitting, I'm not necessarily as comfortable. I'm moving around a lot more. I'm finding my energy levels are a lot higher. I feel a lot better. I feel like I need to be a lot more productive. I've had colleagues that suggest, let's go for a walking meeting, whether it's inside or outside. I mean, you know, obviously our weather situation sometimes is very difficult and challenging in the Twin Ports, but walking meetings sometimes help you be much more efficient with your time, and you're taking care of wellness at the same time. Another naughty behavior that we engage in is not having an agenda, or having an agenda and not using it. This is a huge pet peeve for me, is coming to a meeting, somebody schedules a meeting, I have no idea what we're going to talk about, what I should prepare for, what I should bring to it, what action items I might need to be ready to actualize at the end of the meeting, or there's an agenda, but we just kind of go away from that. Naughty behavior. Similarly, not having a note taker, or having somebody who's going to actually kind of keep record of who's delegating what tasks to whom, or who's going to be managing what, or what types of things need follow-up. Speaking of follow-up, one of the naughty behaviors too is allowing people to disappoint us and not follow through on tasks. This is a huge time management and prioritization piece, right? Of, you know, we've all been in those meetings before, somebody says, yeah, I'll take care of that. And you immediately know, I didn't see them write it down. They're probably not going to remember that they need to do that. Sure enough, you come back to the next set of meetings, maybe a week or 2 weeks later, and the person says, oh gosh, I forgot about that. And oh, I'm sorry, I've delayed everything. Yep, you have delayed everything. And that's a naughty behavior. And not imparting appropriate boundaries. I think certainly in the work from home or the telecommute environment, we've all had the big challenge of how do we impart appropriate boundaries with the people that we live with, or the fur babies we live with, or just our work in general, when our work might be right in the middle of our living space. One of our naughty time management behaviors is not imparting those boundaries, and engaging in, well, I'm just going to check my email for a minute, and then it becomes half an hour or 45 minutes. Or one of the things that I know that I've been guilty of in the past is I always look at my calendar before I go to bed at night, and then it's very easy to switch over from that calendar button to the email button, and then soon you're reading your emails, you're getting all heated up about something, or you're trying to respond to something. Not an appropriate boundary. Just quickly in the chat, if people could just put like a quick comment or something of like, does this make sense? Does this sound like you? Does this sound like somebody you know? That would be just really helpful for me to know. If you don't have to admit to your naughty behaviors, because I bet you we've probably done all of them before, but it'd be really just good to know if people have seen some of these bad behaviors in themselves or others. These bad behaviors, so why are they so bad? They cause us to get resentful. We get resentful of ourselves. We get resentful of the people that we work with. We get resentful of our supervisors or our supervisees. When we feel like our time is being flexed in ways we don't want it to, or it's being overused or underused or something like that, that causes resentment. And that emotion, resentment, is a really heavy emotion, and that oftentimes causes us to judge other people. It causes us to get really impatient. I know that there's been instances in my past when I see a certain type of meeting come across my calendar, somebody set up for something with me, or a project that I'm working on, and I see who it comes from, and I just, I can't handle my patience with this, because I know that this is going to be challenging, because it doesn't feel efficient, or it doesn't feel like I'm going to come out of this meeting knowing what I need to do and what they need to do. These bad behaviors also cause us to overwork ourselves and overwork our teammates. If we're not imparting those appropriate boundaries, sometimes then, we've probably all been in the situations where you get these emails at, 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night. If you're a traditional business hour person, I realize that there's probably some folks out here that don't work those, traditional business hours. But we might get into a situation where we're just overworking ourselves because we feel like we have to catch up from these naughty behaviors being part of things. They may cause us to be bad supervisors or be bad supervisees. We get frazzled, right? At the beginning of the session here, there was a couple of comments there about just kind of feeling like my day gets away from me and I'm not finishing these tasks, and the day ends and I question, what did I actually do today? We can easily get frazzled and get frustrated, and when we get distracted and then feel like, oh, I just don't even know where to start or how to get back into things. So sometimes those naughty behaviors can kind of spiral out of control, and then we start feeling like my job is out of control. And obviously at the core of all of it is that we run out of time. Okay, so 20 minutes in, gonna have a sip of coffee here. Not that I need more coffee, but 20 minutes in, we've laid out the landscape of, these naughty behaviors, the things that make it really challenging, all of that sort of stuff. You're probably sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, I feel stressed just hearing Nikki talk about all of this stuff. And now I'm sitting on this webinar and I'm not doing my work. And how do we make it all better? Okay. It does sound horrible, right? This sounds horrible. It is, or it can be, or it will be, unless, and this is the key, and if you're a person that writes down notes or you have a little planner or a journal or anything like this, write this phrase at the top of your page: take time to make time. That is the key to all things time management, from what I have read, what I have learned, what I have practiced, what I do in my individual work and managing everything that I do, is that you have to take time, you have to set time aside to be able to get your ducks in a row so that you can make time to be effective and efficient in your work. So what does that actually mean? How do we fix this? So I've listed out 5 different things that we're going to go through in the remainder of the time here. And I'm going to give you, this is where the tools in the tool belt come to play, right? So if you think about construction workers having those big tool belts, police officers having those big belts, we're going to put some tools in that tool belt right now for you to figure out, how do we fix this? So these 5 different things are what we're going to focus on for the remainder of the webinar. Chunking and blocking, okay? It does sound kind of weird. So the first thing that I always tell folks when, I have quite a number of people that, I've given this presentation in a number of different contexts and individually in group settings, to college students, to professionals, all sorts of different folks. The first thing that I always talk to people about is, tell me how you start your workday and how you end your workday, or how you start your school day and end your school day. And a lot of people are kind of like, well, I don't know. I mean, I sit down on my computer, open my email, check my voicemails, figure out what meetings first, what do I need to get together. That's usually how most folks talk about the start of their day, right? The first thing that I always institute or try to help people institute is this idea of to-do to-leave lists. Now this is a little different since many of us probably aren't working in our actual workplace right now, although some of you may. But the to-do to-leave list is, here's all of the things that I need to do in order to leave. And I know that might sound kind of strange, like, well, why are you orienting yourselves around getting away from work? But think about that feeling that we have, that dreadful feeling or that resentful feeling that sometimes we have at the end of the workday of, oh, I just didn't get anything done. I didn't get all of the things done that I wanted to get done, all that sort of stuff. The to-do to-leave list is the manageable list of, here are all of the things that I know that I need to get done, that I will get done in order to leave work that day. So before you go, you're going to go back through that to-do list and say, did I get all of these things done that I put on my to-do list? And then at the end of the day, you can take a look at it and be like, yep, I got those things done, or holy cow, today was a dumpster fire, I didn't get any of these things done. The challenge of that is when people make these to-do lists that are 8 miles long, right? I don't think any of us can get an 8-mile long to-do list done in one day. I always tell people, start with 5 things. 5 things that you can get done during that workday. And depending on what your job is, and depending on what type of work environment you work in, if you're like somebody like me, I have many days where I'm in meetings for 6 or 7 hours of the day. So I might only have a window period of 1, maybe 2 hours, if that, where I can actually work on projects and work on tasks. And the rest of the time I'm sitting in meetings and participating and taking notes and all that sort of thing. So I have to think about, okay, during that 1 or 2 hour period, what are the things that I can get done in that 1 to 2 hour period? Okay, and here's my to do to leave list for today. And these are, I have an hour and a half free today. So these are the 2 things that I'm gonna make sure that I can get done during that time, and then I feel good about it. Now, some of the rest of you might have really wide open jobs where there's not a lot of meetings, you're kind of a self-starter, you manage your own projects, you figure out how that's gonna go. That open time frame sometimes can be a bit of a vacuum, right? Of like, yeah, I'll get stuff when I, get stuff done when I get stuff done and everything's fine. So for folks like that, I always suggest that to leave list as well, so that you're giving yourself some containers. Now, talking about containers, I call them chunks, okay? Chunks and blocks. Chunks of time, and I talk about micro chunking in your calendar. So thinking about chunks of time that you can dedicate to tasks or projects or actions. The first ones I always suggest to people is you think about if you work a traditional business day, so whatever that might be, 7 to 3, 8 to 4, whatever your traditional business day might look like, there's 2 natural chunks that are in there, right? Morning and afternoon. Or maybe you break it up and you say, well, there's kind of 3 chunks for me. There's morning, there's midday, and there's afternoon, or however it might break up. We have some natural chunks there. And so I always tell folks, take that to do to leave list and break it down into those natural chunks that exist in your workday. So what are the things, and I actually have this on my, I wish I could show you my to-do list, but there's probably some things on there I shouldn't broadcast all over the internet. But my to-do to leave list has my morning time tasks and my afternoon tasks, okay? And so I operate it within those 2 chunks of here's the things that by the time I'm having myself some lunch, these are the things I want to achieve. And by the time I leave by the end of the day, these are the types of things that I want to achieve. If you're somebody that, you always have like a staff meeting roundup or something like that in the morning time, or all of your meetings are in the morning and you have open time in the afternoon, obviously you manage your chunks a little bit differently. Some people also do something that's even more unique to this, which is assigning tasks to those chunks. This is when it starts getting fun and also a bit geeky. So hopefully you like the fun and geeky. And this is where you start getting into like chunking 2.0. So you start creating little chunks like, this is when I'm going to check my voicemail and return all of the voicemails. This is the little chunk that I do that. So, I have that on my calendar for about 15 minutes in the morning. I don't get a lot of phone calls. So I have a little chunk that's just for every single day, voicemail, listen to the voicemail, and return. You might have a tidying chunk. So if you're somebody that has tons of paperwork and lots of things that are being brought to your desk and all that sort of stuff, that, you might have a little chunk at, mid-afternoon or after lunch or something like that, where you tidy up your desk every day so that, your desk isn't getting out of control and you don't have stuff all over the place. Perhaps you have a lot of meetings with different clients and different coworkers and supervisees, and you might need to do some case notes or some supervision notes or write down some things, to remember for the future. And so you have a little chunk of time to take those notes down. I have something built into my calendar 2 times a week so that I can write down different things to think about with, I have about 30 people that are on my entire team. And so different things that I need to keep track of or remember about those different individuals to make sure that everything is staying okay. Maybe you have a little chunk where, you need to run errands around campus or around town or around your organization, your factory, wherever you work, where you have to physically go out and meet with some people. You need to deliver things, you need to pick things up, whatever that might be. So you schedule a little chunk for that. And obviously things like wellness. I don't have to tell anybody who's on this call about the value of wellness and also the value of enjoying times when we have good weather. I've lived in the Twin Ports now for 10 years, and what I've realized is that I have a quantifiable change in me of recognizing I'm have truly acclimated to the north, because when the sun comes out, my mood elevates incredibly because, we don't get a lot of sunlight in Superior or Duluth often. And when the weather is nice over the summertime, it's like all bets are off. I want to be outside because we know what's coming. So making sure that you're scheduling some wellness time in there too. I have time on my calendar every day. I use the Headspace meditation app. Where I have lunch and then I do a little headspace. Our university does some mindfulness practices at different times during the week too. And so I have those on my calendar so that it's dedicated chunks for me to be focusing on my own wellness. Okay, so the second part of this I talked about is things to use. Now we're going to get into some of the technology pieces. I am a Google Chrome user for my internet browser. I think many folks are, and so I share a couple of examples. Microsoft Edge and Safari have some similar options to this. I don't highlight those as much because I know a lot of organizations push the use of Chrome, so that's why I have these on here. I'm going to share a couple of different examples, and I know Bailey's recording this too, so we'll get this back out to everybody so that you can go and explore these yourself. But Chrome has all of these different pieces that you can add as extensions, and there's two ones on here that I have used quite a bit in the past that are focused both around task as well as wellness. The one on the left, Healthy Browsing, is a very interesting app and or an extension. And so anytime you have your Chrome open, you can set these intervals on there that really help keep you focused around health behaviors. Blinking reminders, which always kind of makes me laugh of like, okay, you can't not blink for 20 minutes, but I get what they're saying about like kind of, you know, moving your eyes away from the screen and refocusing and all of that. I'm someone who's trying to drink a lot more water and be a lot healthier with that. So you can, on a sliding scale, you can give yourself a reminder every 20 minutes to take a couple of sips of water, every 45 minutes down a bottle of water, whatever it might be. Stretch reminders and posture reminders. Any of us that sit at a desk for any period of time, you know, we end up like, you know, being all curled over by the end of the day. That posture reminder, I actually have mine set for every 10 minutes to get me to sit back upright when I am sitting. The stretch one is really nice every once in a while. I usually do stretch and coffee together. But the healthy browsing is a really good way to kind of jog yourself out of the situation that you're in to engage in some of these health behaviors. I think oftentimes too, when we do things like having a fresh cup of coffee or a nice cold glass of water or doing some stretching or, you know, sitting up straight, repositioning ourselves in our chair or standing up for a little while, that whole process biologically kind of reinvigorates us. And so oftentimes that can help kind of reinvigorate us in terms of problem solving or attending to the task that we're trying to complete, or you know, if you're like me, you get kind of the post-lunch, mid-afternoon sleepies. I tend to try to do these practices a little bit more often in the afternoon because early to mid-afternoon is my lowest energy time frame of the day. And so the healthy browsing extension is really helpful, and you can use that in Chrome. You can use it anytime you have Chrome open. So whether it's, you know, you're using it for work or you're using it personally, these will continue to kind of pop up. They can make sounds if you want. There's a little desktop notification, all sorts of good stuff like that. The one on the right hand, Marinara, the Pomodoro Assistant, the name of it comes from those old kitchen timers that looked like tomatoes or looked like eggs. I remember my mom had one, and it actually was a little egg, and so I always think about that of like the tick, 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 you know. There's two different things that are part of this Marinara, which is focus time and break periods. And well, there's actually three. There's focus, short break, and long break. I love using a Pomodoro Assistant, and the idea of Pomodoros is that you run these cycles, and so that you have multiple sessions of focus with short breaks in between. And then you have a long break after you've done a couple of those cycles. And you know, this is just a screenshot of what that looks like, but you can edit it to like, how long do you want your duration to be? 10 minutes obviously is not very long, but for some people that might be a big challenge to do 10 minutes, so I shouldn't judge that. There's timer sounds that you can put in there too. So some folks might really like that metronome, that dink, dink, think, you know, you could change the speed if you want. There's all sorts of different things. You can also have nothing at all if you don't want the sound. And then when it's complete, it can give you a desktop notification, it can open a new tab, or it can play a little sound to kind of pull you out of that focus. And then it will automatically start the short break period, which again, you can adjust that to however long you want it to be. You can ask it to give you a desktop notification or a new tab or a sound. And then there's also, what you don't see on the screen here, is a long break period where you can after you've done a certain number of these cycles, I think I have mine set at 4 cycles, then you can have a longer break. And typically I tell folks, you know, kind of think about your biological break needs and break it down from there, because you're certainly, if you are a person that says, you know, okay, you know, every 45 minutes or an hour, I need to go to the restroom, or I need to refill my beverage, or whatever it is, then you break it down from there so that you have those periods of focus and short break. As I've introduced this to folks, I have had a lot of feedback from people saying, oh my gosh, that's so helpful to me to be able to have something else that's guiding me to stay on task. And you can see up in your Chrome notifications, you can see like, okay, you have 2 minutes left, or, you know, whatever it might be. You can also go into the history tab, and if you're ultra geeky about this, you can go into the history tab and you can actually look and see like how many full cycles have you done over a period of time. And so sometimes that's really exciting to be able to, you know, say like, oh, okay, you know, I was particularly productive today because I did, you know, 6 Pomodoro cycles, or whatever it might be. There are other Chrome extensions too, and I don't have them featured on here, but there are other Chrome extensions to think about. If you are easily tempted by social media, if social media is not part of your job, I should say, if you are easily tempted by going on social media, there are Chrome extensions on there that actually block those, or only allow you to go to those sites during certain periods of time, or you can only be on those sites for a certain amount of time. So I've used those in the past when I've been a little bit more attached to Facebook or Twitter or whatever it might be, to say you can only go on this website, you know, after 4 o'clock, and you can only be on it for 10 minutes at a time or whatever, because we know social media can oftentimes be a black hole for us to go down. There's some other Chrome extensions on here too that I want to share with folks. One is Grammarly. This isn't necessarily about time management, but this is really a great grammar tool. It's actually stronger than what's inborn in both the Google Suite and the Microsoft Suite. And you can embed it into your Outlook. You can embed it into Microsoft Word, Excel, all of that sort of stuff. Will help identify, obviously, I think we are all trying to become better writers and better communicators. It'll help identify grammar issues. It also helps to give perspective on what level your writing is at. So if you're trying to become a more professional writer or a more academic writer, it can give you feedback on that. So that's another Chrome extension. What you see, the blue and white boxes up there, that is called Momentum. And Momentum is an extension that allows you to put in specific days. You see this is old because it's from last fall, but you can put in specific days and it will, oh, I'm sorry, this is open day counter, sorry. It will allow you to actually see how many days you have left until that time frame. So if you're somebody who really jives off of, you know, I have 162 days until this happens, or I have, you know, 14 days until this happens, every time you open a new tab, those days will show up there. For some people, that invokes a great amount of panic. So if that's you, please don't use that. But for me, you know, I enjoy putting things in there because it gives me something to look forward to and kind of gives me an idea of how far something is away. And then there's another one called Momentum, which is when you open a new screen. This is what you see in the bottom right-hand corner. It's a whole entire kind of outlook for you of, you can put on what your main focus is for today. You can name yourself, so it'll say like good morning to you, good afternoon, good evening. What is your main focus for today? So you could, you know, complete quarterly report or whatever it might be. On the bottom right hand, there's a to-do list tool, so you can put your to-do list items. I have worked with individuals before where I suggest that they use this, and that's where they put their to-do to leave item on there. So every single time that they're opening a new Chrome tab, that pops up on there so that they're seeing their to-do list. And it also gives you things like what the weather is. It gives you a motivational quote, obviously a beautiful picture. And so, you know, you can look at some of these different tools to be able to help you. Certainly in this day and age, in the situation we're in, we're using Zoom meetings a lot. There's Chrome extensions for Zoom schedulers and Skype schedulers that you can embed as well. Email tools. There are 3 things that I always talk to folks about email tools to really help you with prioritizing time and task. If you are in a job, gosh, this is really blurry, I apologize for that. But if you are in a job or a position that you tend to write a lot of the same emails over and over again, there's an Outlook plugin called Template Phrases. And what that allows you to do, and you can kind of see it on the right-hand side here, but is you can create different categories of emails and then create the actual text of the email. And you can click on that and it will embed it right into the email. And then you can personalize it with, you know, Dear John or Dear Susie, or, you know, please get back to me by Friday, or whatever it might be. In my work, in my role, I use this for everything. If there's, you know, I kind of run it through the filter of, if I think I might send this message more than 2 or 3 times, I put it as a template phrase. And it's really nice because you can go, you can edit them. So if it's maybe a little bit out of date because that was the template phrase from last year, you can update it. Very, very helpful in terms of not having to repeat yourself over and over again. There's also a feature called Boomerang. The next 2 ones, these are ones that I'm giving away some of my trade secrets here to, I have oftentimes gotten a comment from folks, or a compliment from folks of, gosh, how did you remember that? And, you know, how did that come top of mind? This is how. There's a Outlook plugin called Boomerang, and Boomerang does exactly what a boomerang is, which is you can send an email and then you can choose the time. You can choose the time in which you want it to go out. So if I can write an email right now and I can say, don't actually send this until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, or send this exactly 1 week from today. Or I can send a follow-up. So I'm sending this message now, but send this follow-up 1 week from today. There's a certain amount of free credits that you get. You have to pay for more boomerangs after that. But the next one is one that I strongly encourage most people to use, which is follow up then. So if you Google follow up then email, you will actually see a better description of this. Follow up then is basically a self-generated email address that you would put in either your CC, or I would suggest you put it in your BCC, that will circle that email back around to you at the time frame in which you give it. So if I'm sending an email to my teammate Haley is on the call today. So if I'm sending an email to Haley and I want to send that today, want to send it to her today, but I want to revisit with it 1 week from now, I can send the email and it's to Haley, and then in the BCC I would put 1 week at followupthen.com. Or if I want to send this email to Haley and then 3 days from now send, you know, another follow-up to her, I can put 3 days at followupthen.com. It's also really good for things like, oh yeah, you know, I need to sometime in mid-August, get back together with this person and revisit this. So then I could put August 15th at followupthen.com, or next year at followupthen.com. You see where I'm going with this. 7 a.m. tomorrow. So you can really change whatever you want the front half of that email to be. And I always pop it in the BCC because I think it's kind of strange if people see something of like, what is this follow-up then? Why are you emailing somebody other than me? But I always put it in the BCC, and then that shows up in my email, and it gives me the prompt to go ahead and do that follow-up action, whether that's a phone call or you know, a chat or a video call or whatever it is. When I have introduced that that and template phrases to folks, people have just kind of gone nuts. Haley's putting a comment in here about follow-up then's amazing. Really, really good. Since I'm speaking to a community of business people here, there's a lot of good usage in terms of cultivating stronger customer relations or colleague relations. Of, if you want people to really see that you have a lot of good follow-up procedures, or that you're really staying on top of things or anything like that, you can use the follow-up then to kind of show like, yep, when I said I'd get back to you in a couple of weeks, or I'd check in a couple of weeks from now, here I am checking in a couple of weeks from now.
Hey, Nikki, we have a question from Lori Frisk, and she says, any idea what the data privacy policies are for follow-up then?
That is a really good question, and I don't know a ton of the detail of it. I know for my own personal practice, I don't use it for something for things that have kind of personally identifiable information. So things related to, for me working at a university, students, finances, things of that sort. That would be something I would be happy to check into and get some more information on. I just know I might be a bit more conservative than most in terms of the things that I'm kind of willing to use it for, but I definitely don't use it on things that I would not be okay with somebody kind of get that information getting out beyond that student or beyond that person. But if it's something like, following up on a procedure or a project that we were on or something like that, that, kind of runs the headline test of if this ended up, Mickey Fitch-Collins, sends follow-up to, whomever, I'm okay with that, but if it has personally identifiable information in there, I most certainly don't do that. But I can definitely follow up on that. Okay, so the last part when we think about time management and really getting control of your life, I talked before about you have to, really make sure that you are setting time aside to be intentional about how you're managing your time, right? All of us have some type of, I think most people at this point are using some type of electronic calendar. I don't think that there's a ton of folks out there that are still kind of doing the paper and pen calendar or anything like that. I listed a few different services where many people are probably familiar with, Calendly, You Can Book Me, most certainly Outlook and Gmail have calendars in there. There's a lot of different things. If you go into the options, the setup options, a lot of different things that you can wiggle around in. Somewhere in the chat, somebody mentioned about, I didn't know that I could change my default setting for how long the meetings are. You can also do things that obviously restrict other people's access or what they can see about your calendar, or that You Can Book Me in Calendly have features in there that people can't book meetings in unless there's a certain amount of time. And so you can set something up where, I don't want anybody to be able to set same day meetings with me or something, because I want to be able to know what my day is going to look like and not have to deal with tomorrow until tomorrow or whatever it might be. So if you're thinking about, how you manage kind of that inflow of other people wanting your time, using these electronic calendars can really help you kind of build some of that structure around that. The other thing I also suggest to folks too, and when I looked at the roster of organizations that are here, there are a number of organizations that have a number of employees. One of the things that I have suggested to different departments that I've worked with or different organizations I've worked with is creating the use of kind of multiple public calendars. In one area, one of the units that I supervise, we have an operational calendar that we've built that everyone that works in that unit has access to that operational calendar. And what's on that operational calendar are those routine tasks and operations, projects, things we need to do that happen at the same time or roughly the same time every year. And we build those as recurring appointments. And so, you can put, okay, we know every March 1st we have to do this process. So we put it in there, put a yearly recurrence on it. You can invite the people to whom are responsible for fulfilling that task, so then it shows up on their personal calendar. But that operational calendar really helps you kind of side by side look at, okay, are there things departmentally that we need to remember to do, or things that we need to follow up on that are kind of built into this longer term operation. I've seen organizations really adopt that, and similar to the follow-up then, really allows whoever your clientele base is to feel like, wow, these people are really on top of it, because they're using, every month, I expect a report from this organization, and boom, there it goes on the first day of the month, because that task was on there, it was delegated and added to the individual calendars of the people whom that task belongs to, and then they did that task and get it out the door right away. The use of those multiple calendars oftentimes is really, really helpful for folks to kind of find some of that efficiency. The last thing I want to talk about here is that we need to change how we treat ourselves. And I know for some of you might be like, oh man, are we talking about feelings and emotions here? Eek. But you know, I've just given you, you know, in the last bit of time here, 20 minutes or so, a ton of different tools to try out and impart in your own work practices. And that might sound like, yeah, this is great. This is all fine and dandy. The problem is maybe I don't have time to work on these things, or I don't have time to check out these these new products, or it seems like too much work to set these things up. I don't know where to start because I don't know what's going to actually be effective and helpful for me. And I have had people say that last line to me, which is, it's just all too much. I'm just going to continue doing what I'm doing because, yeah, you know, I have this piece of paper, I cobble together a list of things I need to do, and it all works out and everything will be fine. The problem with that is that there's self-talk. That's a part of that, right? And there's that conversation we have with ourselves about our worthiness and our jobs. And am I doing this well? Am I managing things well? Am I feeling like I'm excelling in my role, or am I feeling like the waterline is just, you know, kind of right below my nose, and that at any point I might dip below the surface? And a lot of that is, I just think we need to treat ourselves differently. So I put on a couple of things here of, you know, things we ought to remember and remind ourselves, which number one, and I think I've said this throughout this presentation, no one's even close to perfect. There is not a person out there, even Marie Kondo and all of her, you know, methods of organization and tidying and sparking joy and all of those sort of things, even she would be a person that says, you know, there's no one out there that's close to perfect when it comes to managing time and task. The second thing, as I mentioned before, is it's not actually about managing your time. It's about managing priorities and figuring out, how do we take the time to make the time? And so what are the priorities? And this is a process that I encourage people, I've worked through with people before, is list out what your personal priorities are and list out what your work priorities are. And if you can't list that out in like 30 seconds or less in both of those columns, then you need to work on figuring out what your priorities are. Because if we don't know where our priorities are, then we're just kind of doing like the shotgun approach to whatever's in our work. We're just shooting it out, hoping something sticks, hoping we take care of a couple of things, and then the workday is over with. If it doesn't align with our priorities or what our supervisor says our priorities are, then we probably need to run it through a different filter of, is this something that's worth my time? No one likes a quitter, but people respect no. This is a huge one. When I went back to the beginning and kind of talking about, you know, how people get frustrated and start getting resentful of themselves and other people when it comes to not following through on tasks or being poor, meeting facilitators or whatever it is. I try to get this across to people all the time is, I would rather you say no right up front, and I want you to say no rather than to go 3/4 of the way down the line and then say I can't do it anymore. And building that culture, and again, there's many different organizations that are on this call today, but building that culture of, it's okay to say no, if it is okay to say no in your culture, because there are some that aren't. But if it is okay to say no in your work culture, then we need to reinforce that. We need to teach that. We need that to be part of kind of the onboarding process with all new employees is, you know, I'd rather you not quit on something. I'd rather you just say, no, I can't do this. This doesn't fit within my priorities. Lastly, you know, no badges of unbalance. One of the things that I always talk with people about is, you know, people want to be the warriors of the war, right? Of, you know, I'm the overworked, I'm the underpaid, I'm you know, drowning in everything that I'm doing, all this sort of stuff. I have caught myself saying it before too, is, you know, oh my gosh, I was up until this time doing this, or, you know, I'm so out of whack right now because I'm just all over the place with my tasks and all that. It is our job as teammates and colleagues and humans, frankly, and supervisors especially, to not reinforce that culture. Because what that does is that sends the message of, this is a really good idea and continue to do this. So in sum, you need to take time to make time. Again, if you write down anything from today's presentation, is you have to take time to make it work for you, okay? So there's the chunking and blocking, There's the different tools that you can use technology-wise to be able to get yourself to a place where you can automate some of the things in your world so that you can really focus on your time. There's tools out there, you know, you can use timers on your phone, whatever it might be. There's tools and strategies that can really help you make it better. But you as an individual have to be the person that says, I'm going to take time to make time. Saying no is a big part of that. I transitioned into a new role about 6-7 months ago, and one of the things that I have realized in this new role is number one, it's much bigger than I thought it was ever going to be, and number two, I really need to involve the word no more in my day-to-day conversations, because I have to be able to say no, because if I continue to say yes, everything is going to get 30% effort and nothing is going to get 100% effort. And again, if it doesn't fit within those priorities, then we really need to run it through a second filter. And in some also, I'm happy to help any of you with this. And so if there's anything, and I know we have a few minutes left here, but you know, if you're thinking about this and you're thinking, oh man, you know, there's some people in my organization that could really use this, or I want to spend some time going through this more, please reach out to me. I do want to take some Q&A, but I did list my contact information there below. So I do welcome any sort of conversations or reach out or anything like that. So at this point, Bailey, I would be happy to take any questions if people want to unmute themselves, if you want to bring your camera.
We have a couple chat questions, actually. Okay. We have from Erica Hansen. Could you send a recap list of the recommended tools?
Yes, yes. I actually, so how perfect is this? I have that as a template phrase in my Outlook. So yes, I will send that out to Bailey, and then hopefully we can get that out to all of you so that you can kind of click through some of those different things. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And then we have another one from Meredith Hinnenkamp. And how much time to give to something before you realize it's not working out, such as a project?
Ooh. Meredith, that's the question of the century, right? I think one of the things that I always think about with different projects is I'm always, you know, think with the outcome in mind, right? You know, you have to plan and start with the outcome in mind of is what I'm trying to do here, does that align with my priorities of my work or the priorities of the project? And does this sub-project filter up or roll up into that? Or is this just busy work, or is this just, you know, somebody needs to get this done? There are certainly things too that I would say, you know, in each of our job functions, there are things that we have to do that like we do not like doing, right? Like I could easily identify some things in my position that I'm like, this is not why I signed up for this role, right? But I think sometimes, you know, we have to give ourselves a little bit of time to make sure, like, how does this align with our priorities? I try, and what I would suggest to you, Meredith, is run, you know, if you can make that list of these are my work priorities and these are my personal priorities, and the work priorities should probably be like what your position description is structured off of, or what your evaluation is structured off of, or if you have no idea what those two things are, first thing I would do is sit down with my supervisor and say, this is what I think my priorities are in my role. Does that make sense with you? And if they say, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so that's the way I'm going to filter the way that I do projects, the projects that I accept or don't accept, is, you know, do they roll up into these priorities? And then what is the outcome of that project or that task? And if that outcome, if you're doing a ton of work and it's a minuscule outcome that's going to come from that, that may not be actually the best use of your time. But, you know, if it's the outcome of it is going to completely change the way that payroll processes occur at your organization, or the way that something is manufactured or something like that, gosh, that's probably going to be something that you're going to want to prioritize. But I would do some of that kind of like internal prioritization list making first, visit with your supervisor, take a look at your priorities, and then like literally kind of run them through that filter each time you're posed with a new project idea. Yeah, good question. Other questions anybody has?
And feel free to unmute too if you'd like to just ask the question.
Yeah. Good deal. All right.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate everyone being here today. Again, my contact information is there. I am the only Mickey that works at UW Superior, so even if you don't remember my name or anything, you can go to the UW Superior webpage, just Google Mickey, and I will come up there. And I'm happy to connect with you, your colleagues, your teammates, and help you in any sort of way that I can. And Bailey, thank you and the Chamber for inviting me to do this presentation today. I really appreciated it.
Yeah, thank you. We really appreciate you taking the time to present for us. It was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye-bye.